They were carved into the sky, long before satellites and compasses, long before inked lines told us where we were. Our ancestors looked up, and they didn't just see stars. They saw meaning, they saw memory, and they built towering monuments, hidden alignments, sacred sites that whispered across millennia. They weren't random. They were mirrors of constellations, solstices, and cycles so vast they could only be measured by stone, shadow, and time. What if ancient civilizations weren't just watching the sky? What if they were following it, mapping it, encoding messages so profound we've only just begun to understand them? And maybe, just maybe, they weren't building for themselves, they were building for us. Because when you know how to read it, the sky was never just a view. It was a map. We open in darkness. No city lights, no glowing screens. Just the hush of night and the shimmer of infinity stretched above. A sky so clear it looks etched in obsidian. The year is irrelevant. It could be 500 years ago, or 5,000. A group of humans, perhaps a family, perhaps a tribe, stands beneath the cosmos, their faces flickering with firelight and starlight. Their world is small, but the sky is enormous, and it is speaking. Back then, the sky wasn't something you looked at for wonder. It was something you listened to for survival. It was your calendar, your clock, your compass, your storybook. The sky told you when the rains would come, when to plant, when to reap, when animals would migrate, when the cold would bite, and when the sun itself would vanish and return, always just in time until one day it wouldn't. To ancient people, the sky was not a backdrop. It was the living pulse of the universe. Its patterns were messages, its cycles, sacred rhythms. And the stars weren't just distant suns. They were signals. They were gods. They were memories. But there was a problem. The sky changes slowly, too slowly for any single human to track its deeper rhythms. And so early civilizations did something extraordinary. They began to etch the sky into the earth. They turned movement into monument, stars into stone, time into temple. They mapped the heavens, not with ink, but with architecture, not on paper, but in permanence. Across deserts, jungles, and mountains, they built great structures aligned with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, constellations. Some even tracked rare alignments that unfold over millennia. But why? Was it religion, science, power, survival, or something else? This documentary is a journey through that question. A decoding of a forgotten language written not in words, but in orientation, in alignment, in intention. We will travel from the African desert to the jungles of Cambodia, from the Andes to the American Southwest, each site whispering the same strange truth. Someone was watching the sky, and they left a message for the future, for us. We begin, as all stories do, with darkness. Imagine yourself alone in the Sahara 10,000 years ago. The land is not dry, but fertile, teeming with life. Rain comes in seasons, herds pass through the grasses, and above it all the stars sweep in a slow, eternal dance. There is no written language, no metal, no wheel, but there is meaning, and there is memory. You notice over time that the sun rises just a little differently with each season, that the stars shift, that something in the sky is cycling. You pass this knowledge on, and they pass it on. But generations blur, memory fades. So you decide it must be carved in stone. A circle is raised, stones dragged from miles away. Some stand upright, others lie horizontal. But they are not random. They are aligned, not to the land, but to the heavens. Thousands of years later, buried under sand, this site is forgotten, erased by time, until the late 20th century. A team of archaeologists stumbles upon something unusual near the Nile's southern reaches, far from the bustle of Giza. It's a cluster of standing stones arranged in a deliberate circle. This is Nabta Playa, a site older than Stonehenge by over a millennium. Its stones align with the rising sun on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, but more curiously, some align with Orion's belt as it appeared 7,000 years ago. How? That's where this mystery deepens. Because the knowledge required to track stellar alignments over centuries demands more than observation. It demands legacy, continuity, a system for remembering what the stars once were and where they would return.
In other words, astronomy in the Neolithic.
And not just astronomy for curiosity's sake, but to encode something permanent, something sacred, perhaps something urgent. Because when the sky becomes a map, it means you're navigating something, perhaps time, perhaps destiny, or perhaps survival. But Nabta Playa is only the first stone in a much larger mosaic. If we follow this thread from Africa to Egypt to Mesopotamia to the Americas, we begin to see a strange pattern. That ancient civilizations with no contact, no shared language, and no shared tools were all doing the same thing. They were watching the sky. And they weren't just watching it, they were responding, building, aligning, recording. Why? Did they know something we've forgotten? Or were they trying to make sure we wouldn't? Tonight we begin an ancient journey, one that arcs across time and stone through myth and memory. We will look at the stars not as twinkling points of light, but as code, as warning, as invitation. And we'll ask the question no one dares to ask. What if these monuments aren't just ruins? What if they're instructions? The stars haven't changed, but maybe we have. What happens when we finally learn to read the sky? Again, stay with me, because what lies ahead may change how you see the ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head forever. Beneath the sands of southern Egypt, far from the Nile's fertile floodplains and the grandeur of pharaohs, lies a place most people have never heard of. No pyramids, no gold, no hieroglyphs, just stones, silent, erect, forgotten. This is Nabta Playa. Today it looks like nothing, a scattering of rocks in the unforgiving desert. But 10,000 years ago it was a lake basin, a seasonal oasis. Rainfall patterns fed the region for a few months each year, attracting animals, vegetation, and people. Nomads, early pastoralists, the first whispers of civilization. And then something strange happened. These early people, without metal tools, without written language, without cities, began to build. They didn't build houses, or walls, or palaces. They built a calendar. The structure they erected was a stone circle, carefully arranged upright slabs and flattened rocks, radiating with purpose. Think of it as Africa's Stonehenge, except it's older by over 1,000 years. Dated to around 5000 BCE, it's one of the oldest known astronomical sites on Earth. But how did archaeologists know it was more than just a ceremonial site? Because of its alignment. A few of the standing stones are precisely positioned to mark the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. On that day, just as the sun rose over the desert horizon, it would have aligned perfectly with the slots between the stones. This wasn't accidental. It was intentional, purposeful, repeated, tracked over generations. Now pause for a moment and consider what that means. These were people who lived before the wheel, before writing, before metal. And yet they understood the movement of the sun across the sky with enough precision to encode it in stone, not just once, but in a form that would endure for thousands of years. That's not mere curiosity, that's memory engineering. They were embedding knowledge in the land, but it doesn't stop with the sun. Some researchers argue that Nabta Playa also aligns with Orion's belt, the three-star asterism in the Orion constellation that has obsessed civilizations across continents. Two pairs of stones may line up with where the belt stars would have appeared on the horizon over 7,000 years ago. If true, this is staggering, because it implies a deep understanding of precession, the Earth's slow axial wobble that shifts star positions gradually over millennia. If the people of Nabta Playa intentionally aligned stones with where Orion's belt used to be, it means they had not just astronomy but timekeeping on a galactic scale. But how could they have known? Some theorists argue it's coincidence, pareidolia. We're pattern-seeking creatures. Others suggest that oral traditions, passed down through generations of skywatchers, retained enough observational knowledge to detect the long-term drift of stars. After all, if your entire culture depends on the sky for survival, for planting, herding, predicting rain or drought, you watch it, obsessively, night after night, generation after generation. Eventually, you see the drift, the difference. The stars aren't where your ancestors said they'd be. Something's changed, and so you build to remember, because stones don't forget. In the heart of the Nabta Playa circle lies a particularly enigmatic structure, a buried megalith, several tons in weight, aligned with celestial north. Surrounding it are rows of smaller slabs, forming radial lines like a sundial. Except this isn't a clock for hours, it's a clock for centuries. It's hard to overstate the sophistication of this. We're not talking about people who built great cities, left behind libraries, or carved their names into monuments. We're talking about prehistoric herders. Their lives were hard, fragile, dependent on weather, on seasons, on cycles, and they decided, for reasons we may never fully understand, to encode the movements of the sky in the bones of the earth. There's something poetic about that, but here's where it gets eerie. Nabta Playa predates the Egyptian civilization by thousands of years, yet some scholars believe it may have laid the cultural groundwork for what followed. The early pastoralists of Nabta Playa eventually migrated east toward the Nile as the desert grew more arid. Did they take their astronomical knowledge with them? Did their descendants build upon this cosmic legacy? Because just a few hundred miles north of Nabta Playa rise the pyramids of Giza, and they too align with Orion's belt.
Coincidence?
Or inheritance? The alignment of the pyramids to Orion's belt has long been a topic of heated debate. Mainstream Egyptology once dismissed it as modern myth-making, but the evidence mounts. The three main pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, are not in a straight line. They're offset, just like the stars of Orion's belt. Their angles match, their proportions match. Even their orientation relative to the Nile reflects the belt's relationship to the Milky Way, but that's a story for the next chapter. Back here in Nabta Playa, there are no massive tombs, no hieroglyphs, no pharaohs, just silence. And yet, something profound was happening here. Archaeologist Fred Rendorf, who led many of the excavations, was struck by how much knowledge seemed to be encoded in the site, how deliberate and intelligent the layout was. He referred to Nabta Playa as possibly the earliest known astronomical observatory. Think about that. The first observatory wasn't made of glass and steel, but sandstone and starlight. And if Nabta Playa is an observatory, then the sky wasn't just something these people watched. It was something they measured. So what were they measuring for? Some suggest solstices for ritual. Others say agricultural timing, knowing when to prepare for the rainy season. But still others suggest something deeper. That these alignments were part of a worldview, one that saw the cosmos not as distant and separate, but as alive, intimate, entangled with earth and time and life itself. To us, the stars are far away. To them, they were home. And now, buried under 10,000 years of sand and silence, Nabta Playa whispers across time. Not in words, but in alignment, in intention, and in warning. Because just as this once lush region became desert, so too can our world shift. Just as they built monuments to remember the sky, what might we build to remember the earth? We leave Nabta Playa with a strange thought. That the very first monument humanity may have ever built wasn't for gods or kings or war. It was for the sky. And the stars, they're still watching. The desert wind moves like memory, slow, deliberate, and full of secrets. And in the distance, rising like mirages that forgot to fade, stand the pyramids. Three titanic shapes carved into the horizon. Not random, not scattered, but placed, aligned, like stones in a game of gods. They have endured time, war, conquest, and erosion. But their real mystery doesn't lie in their size. It lies in their symmetry, their relationship to the sky. The Great Pyramid of Giza, along with its two slightly smaller companions, has stood for over 4,500 years. But some researchers suggest its story begins even earlier, not in stone, but in starlight. Specifically in Orion's belt, three stars, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka, drifting silently in the constellation of Orion, bright, unmistakable, and curiously, slightly offset, not in a straight line, but staggered, like the pyramids. Robert Bauval, an engineer turned researcher, was one of the first to notice the eerie resemblance. To him, the layout of the three pyramids didn't just resemble Orion's belt, it matched it. Not as it appears today, but as it would have appeared around 10,500 BCE if you trace the precession of the equinoxes backward. This, he claimed, was no coincidence. It was a blueprint, a stellar map etched into the earth. And suddenly, the pyramids weren't just tombs. They were memory devices, terrestrial anchors for a cosmic story, keys to understanding how the ancient Egyptians, and perhaps even their mysterious predecessors, saw the universe. But what did Orion mean to them? To the Egyptians, Orion was Osiris, god of the afterlife, resurrection, and cosmic order. He wasn't just a deity, he was the embodiment of eternal return. His death and rebirth mirrored the stars, setting in the west, rising again in the east. The pharaohs believed they would join Osiris in the stars, not metaphorically, literally. Their journey was mapped. The ancient texts, known as the pyramid texts, speak of the king's soul flying up to Orion. I fly up to the sky as a star. And so the pyramids, these monoliths of limestone and mystery, may have served as launch pads for the soul, not in function, but in symbol, anchors between the heavens and the earth, a celestial resurrection machine. And if that's true, the layout matters. The Great Pyramid, Khufu, slightly northeast of the central pyramid, Khafre, and the smallest, Menkaure, pushed a bit farther offline, mirrors the precise offset of Orion's belt. The Nile, running nearby, mirrors the Milky Way, the celestial river across the night sky. The connection wasn't accidental, it was cosmological. But how could they have done this? Aligning a structure as massive as the Great Pyramid with such precision required staggering observational skill. Its sides are aligned to true north with a precision of less than 1/15 of a degree. Even today, replicating that with primitive tools would be a challenge. And yet, they did it. Without telescopes, without compasses. All they had was the sky. Some suggest they used a method called star scoping, tracking circumpolar stars as they rotate and noting their highest and lowest points on the horizon. Over time, this reveals true north with remarkable accuracy. But even if the alignment was possible, why? Why go to such trouble to encode the heavens in limestone? Because to the Egyptians, the cosmos wasn't a distant spectacle. It was fate. It was law. It governed agriculture, ritual, kingship, even the afterlife. The heavens were not above. They were within. Everything mirrored everything. As above, so below. That phrase, found in later Hermetic texts, may well summarize the entire pyramid complex, a three-dimensional invocation of the stars, a sacred geometry of resurrection, not designed to impress, but to remind, to remember the stars and return to them. Now, skeptics are quick to point out problems with the Orion correlation theory. They argue that the angles aren't perfectly aligned, that the theory fits best if you adjust star positions to 10,500 BCE, which is long before Egyptian civilization is supposed to have begun, that it's retrofitting a narrative onto selective data. Fair critiques. But even if the exact correlation is debated, the broader truth remains. The obsession with the sky, with celestial alignment, with encoding eternity into architecture, that is indisputable. The pyramids were not simply grave markers. They were instruments of remembrance, of transcendence. They encode not only stone, but intention. And here's where it deepens, because if the builders of Giza were inheriting a tradition, one that possibly stretched back to Nabta Playa and even earlier, then the pyramids aren't just monuments. They're the culmination of a memory passed through time, and not just human memory, perhaps cosmic memory, because Orion, the hunter, appears in myth after myth across continent after continent. In ancient Greece, he stalked the heavens. In indigenous Australian lore, he's Nyeruna, the fire spirit. The Lakota saw him as the hand of a celestial being. The Maya linked him to creation. The Dogon of Mali believe it holds the secret of an invisible star long before telescopes. Always Orion, always watching. What is it about these three stars? Why do they haunt the human mind? Could it be that their shape, unique and easily recognizable, served as a kind of celestial fingerprint, a mnemonic across epochs, a marker for navigation, for planting, for ceremony? Or was it something deeper, a message, a code? Because here's the speculative twist, and it's worth sitting with if only for a moment. What if Orion isn't just a constellation? What if it's a constant? A repeating symbol in the story of civilization itself, a prompt to remember who we are, a question asked in stone, in sand, in silence. Did the Egyptians invent this cosmic obsession? Or did they inherit it from a people older than history remembers, from sky watchers whose only monuments were shadows and stones? We may never know. But we can look, and when we do, when we stand beneath the pyramids at night, when Orion crests the horizon and the stars shimmer above those perfect triangles of stone, we feel it. That hum, that pull, the sense that we're standing inside a map, one that was never drawn on parchment, but carved instead into the land and the sky. And that map, it points to something coming, something remembered. There is a city in Mexico unlike any other. Long before the Aztecs gave it the name Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born, a mysterious civilization laid out a vast urban complex of pyramids, plazas, and ceremonial causeways with uncanny precision. But here's the enigma. They left no written language, no glyphs, no names, nothing to anchor them in the records of time. They rose, they built, they vanished. And what remains is something astonishing. The Avenue of the Dead runs straight through the city's heart, aligned not haphazardly, but with deliberate astronomical intention. It does not follow true north. Instead, it veers 15.5 degrees east of celestial north, a deviation that perfectly mirrors the setting of the Pleiades constellation at key moments in Mesoamerican calendars. A mere coincidence, or a cosmic signature encoded in stone? Look closer. The Pyramid of the Sun, the largest structure in Teotihuacan, isn't just big. It's aligned so that, on the day of the solar zenith, when the sun is directly overhead, its western face casts no shadow. This only occurs twice a year, during sacred times in the Mesoamerican ritual calendar. Standing at the top, one is immersed in a strange temporal symmetry, the heavens mirrored in earthbound stone. Just beyond lies the Pyramid of the Moon, whose dimensions echo those of the celestial lunar cycles. Between the two, the Avenue of the Dead flows like a river, flanked by 13 square platforms, matching the sacred number in Mesoamerican cosmology, 13 heavens above, 9 underworlds below, and Earth balanced in between. But here's the twist. The entire layout, when seen from the air, appears to mirror the Milky Way. Was Teotihuacan designed as a celestial map? Satellite surveys and LiDAR scans reveal that the pyramid's placement may correspond to major features of our galaxy: the galactic bulge, the spiral arms, and the dark rift that ancient Mesoamericans believed was the Black Road to the underworld. They weren't just building upward, they were building outward, into the cosmos itself. And the deeper we dig, the stranger it gets. In the early 2000s, archaeologists uncovered liquid mercury beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Pools of it, hidden in underground chambers that had been sealed for centuries. To modern scientists, this makes no practical sense. Mercury is toxic, unstable, and incredibly difficult to extract. But to the ancients, it may have been something else entirely. A reflective portal, a mirror to the stars, or perhaps to another world. Even more curious was the discovery of mica, an insulating mineral used in modern electronics, embedded deep within certain temple walls. This mica had no local origin. It had been transported hundreds of miles from Brazil, not for decoration, not for utility, but hidden, sealed away in spaces never meant to be seen. Why? Teotihuacan, in all its grandeur, gives the impression of a machine. Not in the industrial sense, but in the philosophical one, a mechanism designed to align humanity with something greater, a cosmic order, a clock ticking in sync with the stars. But who were the clockmakers? No royal tombs have ever been found, no statues of kings, no obvious hierarchies. Teotihuacan's creators erased themselves from their own narrative. What civilization builds monuments to eternity only to leave behind no names? Some believe the answer lies in the city's collapse. Around 550 CE, Teotihuacan was violently burned, temples destroyed, residences looted, but not by outsiders, by its own people. Was it a rebellion, a cleansing, or was it a ritual ending, intended from the beginning? Even the city's grid seems to whisper secrets. The spacing between structures follows ratios tied to sacred numbers, multiples of 260, the number of days in the Mesoamerican ritual calendar. The units of measurement themselves appear standardized, yet aligned to no modern system. Every plaza, every staircase, every chamber obeys an invisible code. And in that code, echoes of other worlds. Some theorists propose that Teotihuacan was part of a planetary network of sacred sites, a global web of knowledge encoded into geometry. Its alignment with celestial events mirrors that of Giza, Stonehenge, and Angkor Wat. All built with megalithic mastery, all aligned to the stars, all emerging with no clear precursor. Were these sites independent coincidences, or were they branches of a deeper science, one now lost to time? Teotihuacan challenges our assumptions about the past. It was not a city built merely to live in. It was built to resonate, to endure, to speak across millennia, not in words but in patterns. To modern eyes, it looks like a city frozen in time, but to those who built it, perhaps it was never a city at all. Perhaps it was a message, a harmonic, a song etched in stone, meant to vibrate with the universe itself. And maybe that's why they left no books. Because the knowledge was never meant to be read. It was meant to be experienced. Walk the avenue of the dead at sunrise and you'll feel it, not as ruins, but as architecture alive with purpose. Stand beneath the pyramid of the sun during a solar zenith, and the shadowless world will feel uncanny. Not accidental, designed. A civilization that left no language may have spoken in a tongue more enduring than words. Mathematics, astronomy, resonance, geometry. They wrote their story in stone, in shadow, in silence, and the question remains, who taught them to do it? Was this the result of isolated genius, or the remnants of a deeper lineage, an older wisdom, perhaps even antediluvian, echoing from a time before memory, a knowledge so potent, so precious, that it had to be hidden in plain sight? Teotihuacan doesn't give us answers, it dares us to ask better questions. They rise from the earth like sentinels from another world, massive stones arranged with eerie symmetry, defiant of erosion, time, and explanation. To most, Stonehenge is a relic, an ancient curiosity. But beneath its weathered facade lies a code, a cosmic cipher etched in stone, echoing a forgotten science that still whispers through the ages. We are told it was a calendar, but calendars don't weigh 25 tons. They don't travel hundreds of kilometers over rough terrain. They don't align with the heavens so precisely that their shadow play predicts eclipses. They don't outlast empires or memory. So what is Stonehenge? The answer begins, not in the stones themselves, but in the sky. Every year on the summer solstice, the first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon and strike the heart of the monument. It is not random. The massive heel stone positioned to the northeast channels that light like a beacon. The sun doesn't just rise, it enters, it returns. It completes a cycle known and honored by the ancients, long before modern science could explain it. But Stonehenge is not just solar, it is lunar. It speaks to a deeper rhythm. Within its concentric rings lies a lesser-known alignment, the moon's extreme positions in its 18.6-year cycle. The outer station stones and the now-vanished timber circles once acted as markers for this slow, majestic dance, a pattern so subtle it takes a generation to witness fully. And yet someone saw it, someone measured it, and someone encoded it in rock. That someone remains anonymous. No records, no inscriptions, no blueprints, just precision, stone-forged and time-tested. Even the spacing of the stones whispers of knowledge deeper than folklore. The Sarsen circle, with its 30 uprights and 30 lintels, may correspond not just to days in a month, but to a computational model, capable of tracking both solar and lunar eclipses using what's known today as the Saros cycle. The Saros cycle, 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours, is the periodic rhythm through which eclipses repeat. It was once thought to be discovered by the Babylonians, but Stonehenge may have anticipated it by over 1,000 years. Imagine a device, immovable and grand, capable of encoding celestial recurrence, a stone computer that doesn't just mark time, it predicts it. And yet the true function of Stonehenge may be even stranger. Recent discoveries using ground-penetrating radar reveal that Stonehenge is but the centerpiece of a sprawling landscape of hidden structures. Ditches, pits, and buried stones arranged in massive concentric formations extending kilometers beyond the visible circle. Some of these subterranean elements align not with the solstice sun, but with stars, specific stars, Sirius, Arcturus, Aldebaran, the brightest in the sky, all part of the mythologies of ancient peoples. Was Stonehenge not just a calendar, but a temple to the cosmos itself? There are stranger details still. In 2020, archaeologists uncovered a ring of massive shafts, each 10 meters wide and 5 meters deep, forming a perfect circle 2 kilometers across around the nearby Durrington Walls site. These were not casual holes, they were dug with purpose. They mirror celestial patterns, and they encase Stonehenge like a planetary orbit encircling a sun. Someone, thousands of years ago, had the will, the manpower, and the mathematical insight to orchestrate a project of cosmic scale. And yet, they left no names, no kings, no architects, no scribes, just geometry, alignment, intention. Even the stones themselves hold secrets. The inner blue stones, smaller but magnetically anomalous, were transported over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. Why? These weren't the nearest rocks. They weren't the easiest to move, but they were the most resonant. Strike one, and it rings like a bell. Sound, vibration. Perhaps another layer to the site's purpose. Could Stonehenge have been more than a calendar or observatory? Could it have been a resonant chamber, designed to interact with sound, frequency, and human consciousness itself? Experiments have shown that within the central circle, sound behaves strangely. Low-frequency tones bounce and amplify, whispers travel, footsteps echo like thunder. Some researchers call it an ancient acoustic lens, others a sacred healing space. a place where the veil between worlds thinned, not just through geometry, but through resonance. But here's what makes Stonehenge truly haunting. It was not built all at once. It evolved over 1,500 years. Generation after generation added, realigned, rebuilt, always with the same celestial precision. The site grew, but the purpose stayed fixed. This was not a casual gathering site. It was an intergenerational obsession, a commitment to something larger than life, larger than civilization, something written in the sky. And then, it stopped. Stonehenge was abandoned. The final stones were never completed. The rituals ceased. The people moved on. Why? Was the knowledge lost, forbidden, or did it serve its purpose? Some believe the last phase of Stonehenge coincided with a major cosmic event, a solar-lunar alignment so rare that it only occurs once every 6,585 days. The kind of moment that ancient astrologer priests would have deemed sacred, perhaps even apocalyptic. Did Stonehenge culminate in a grand alignment and then fall silent as if its mission was complete? Or was it a warning? A model of cycles, of endings and beginnings. A reminder that what comes around comes again, and that forgetting the sky is forgetting ourselves. Modern archaeologists still debate Stonehenge's purpose, but the deeper we look, the less it feels like a calendar, and the more it feels like a codex, a megalithic manuscript etched into the landscape. One that doesn't just tell time, but tells us something about our place in the universe. A machine, yes, but not of gears and wires. A machine of stone, shadow, sound, and starfire across the arid high desert of the American Southwest, where the mesas stretch like frozen waves and the sky swallows the horizon, lies a silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the echo of memory. Here, nestled in the sandstone heart of New Mexico, the ruins of Chaco Canyon whisper of a civilization that once watched the stars, not for myth, not for story, but for structure, for time. To the casual traveler, Chaco Canyon is a collection of crumbling walls and ancient doorways. But from the sky, a pattern emerges. The great houses, massive complexes of stone, aligned with uncanny precision, form a map, a celestial map, one that mirrors the movements of the sun, the moon, and something more. They weren't just building homes, they were building instruments. The ancestral Puebloans who once inhabited Chaco were not hunter-gatherers clinging to survival. They were sky watchers, engineers of shadow and light. Their architecture was data, their walls, equations in sandstone. Every spring and autumn equinox, a beam of sunlight passes through a precisely placed window in Pueblo Bonito, illuminating a niche carved deep within. This moment, the balance between day and night, is locked in stone, forever repeating, marking the passage of time not just for the year, but for the soul of the community. But the sun was only the beginning. On a cliff wall near the Fajada Butte, rising 135 meters from the canyon floor, 3 massive stone slabs lean against the rock face, casting shifting shadows across 2 spiral petroglyphs carved into the surface. This is the sun dagger. At summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight slices through the center of the larger spiral. At winter solstice, it frames the opposite side. And during the equinoxes, twin daggers embrace both spirals. These spirals, we now understand, are calendars, but not just for seasons. They also track the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon's major and minor standstills, a subtle, long-term wobble that alters the moon's rising and setting points. This isn't backyard stargazing, this is generational astronomy. To build the sun dagger, the Chacones would have needed decades, if not centuries, of careful observation, watching the skies night after night, marking patterns invisible to the impatient. They weren't merely recording, they were encoding time. Think about that. In a world without telescopes, clocks, or written records, They charted the dance of the cosmos across decades. They created a model of lunar motion so precise that modern astronomers now use it to verify their own simulations. And yet these were not kings or priests, not pharaohs with armies. They were a communal people, living in one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth. So why? Why invest so much into the stars? Some say it was religious, that the alignments marked sacred rituals, solstice ceremonies, agricultural cycles. And that's likely true. But there's something deeper here, something obsessive. The Great North Road, for instance, a 30-foot wide engineered roadway, extends nearly due north from Chaco for over 30 miles. It climbs cliffs, crosses arroyos, and follows no practical terrain. It aligns not with trade routes, but with the pole star. It's a terrestrial arrow pointing to the heavens, as if the people of Chaco were building not just cities, but statements. A statement like, "We see you," to the stars, to the universe, to the gods, whatever names they used. Even more mysterious are the towers. High atop outcroppings, twin towers rise, now ruined but once formidable. Their windows, walls, and shadows align with distant landmarks and lunar cycles. Some researchers believe they acted as heliographs, stations where priests or astronomers could send messages using mirrors and sunlight across vast distances. Others believe they were observatories, echo chambers, or cosmological markers. But here's what's staggering. These towers are not random. They form part of a vast network. Chaco was a hub, a node in a lattice that stretched across the southwest, from Mesa Verde to Salmon Ruins, to Aztec, hundreds of miles, a civilization of observers. And then, the stars changed. Around 1130 AD, the sky above Chaco flared. A new star appeared, day bright. It cast shadows at night. For weeks it lingered. It was a supernova, likely SN 1054, whose remnants we now call the Crab Nebula. And the people of Chaco saw it. On a canyon wall, a handprint and a sunburst symbol appear next to a crescent moon. The crescent matches the position of the moon on July 5th, 1054 AD, the night the supernova exploded into view. If true, it is one of the oldest astronomical records in North America. Think of what that meant to them. The unchanging heavens, suddenly alive, a divine disruption, a celestial omen. Was it recorded in awe, in fear, or as another data point in their eternal ledger of sky? We may never know. But what we do know is this: shortly after that explosion, the great civilization of Chaco began to decline. Construction stopped. The towers fell quiet. The people dispersed, like the flicker of a candle in the vastness of time. Some say drought ended Chaco. Others point to internal strife or migration. But maybe, just maybe, they finished what they came to do. Built their sky machine, recorded the stars, told time not in minutes, but in epochs. And then, satisfied, they left. Chaco Canyon is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists come, photographs are taken, but the real monument is not in what remains, it's in what was known. A civilization that thought not in days, but in generations. That saw the moon as more than a light in the sky, but as a signal, a pattern, a promise. And that built, in stone and silence, a legacy of astronomical patience that still humbles the modern world. We remember them not for what they said, but for what they saw, and for what they aligned with. In the damp stillness of the Cambodian jungle, where vines curl around forgotten stones and the morning mist clings to the earth like breath, rises a structure that defies simple categorization. Angkor Wat, temple, fortress, observatory machine, the largest religious monument on Earth. But that's only what we see from the ground. From the sky, the story changes. Its 5 iconic towers pierce the horizon like the fingers of a celestial clock. Its outer moat spans hundreds of meters, forming a perfect rectangle. Galleries stretch with mathematical symmetry, every stone laid not just for beauty, but for alignment. Orientation. Every inch of Angkor Wat appears to have been calibrated, not for the whims of kings, but for the heavens. At first glance, it's a temple to Vishnu, the Hindu god of preservation. But look deeper, literally, and you'll find something stranger: the orbit of Venus, encoded in stone. Yes, Venus, the second planet from the sun. A world cloaked in clouds, brilliant in the dawn and dusk skies, often called the morning star. To the ancient Khmer architects, it wasn't just a planet, it was a cycle, a rhythm, a mystery worthy of reverence. Venus doesn't orbit like Earth. From our vantage point, it completes a visible cycle every 584 days, rising and setting in patterns that repeat every 8 years. During this period, it traces a perfect five-pointed star or pentagram across the sky. Now here's where it gets uncanny. The dimensions of Angkor Wat encode the numbers 584 and 8 in multiple ways. The west-facing orientation of the temple is already unusual. Hindu temples almost always face east. But Venus, as the evening star, appears brightest in the west. Angkor Wat isn't just observing, it's honoring. Within its galleries, measurements taken by archaeoastronomers reveal distances of 1,436 cubits, matching closely to 584 multiplied by 2.456. The number of days Venus appears in a single apparition when factoring in lunar cycles. Coincidence, or something more deliberate? We have to remember, the Khmer Empire didn't have telescopes, no computers, no orbital simulations. But they watched. Night after night, decade after decade, Venus would rise, disappear, and return, always on schedule. To them, Venus wasn't a rock in space. It was a divine metronome, a cosmic heartbeat, and perhaps a goddess. Across ancient cultures, Venus has always been personified: Ishtar, Aphrodite, Inanna. To the Maya, Venus was more important than the sun itself. The Khmer, though Hindu-Buddhist, may have encoded her dance into the very bricks of Angkor Wat, not as worship, but as acknowledgement, a planetary alignment of awe. Even the positioning of the towers has been linked to the apparent elongation of Venus from the sun, its maximum angular distance, about 47 degrees. The angle between key structures, viewed from specific vantage points at dawn, mirrors this celestial separation. And there's more. Some researchers argue that the layout of the entire Angkor complex, not just Angkor Wat, reflects the precession of the equinoxes, a slow 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis that alters the position of stars over millennia. A cosmic drift, only noticeable if your civilization watches the skies for centuries. Angkor's temples appear to shift in orientation from east to west as you move chronologically through their construction, from Phnom Bakeng to Bayon to Angkor Wat. It's as if the city was built to track not just Venus, but the slow unfolding of Earth's own celestial path. Imagine that, a civilization aligning its architecture to the slow tilt of the planet itself. Not for commerce, not for war, but for time. It's no wonder some scholars now refer to Angkor not as a city, but as a sky calendar, one measured in generations. And yet this wasn't done by isolated monks or rogue astronomers. These were massive construction projects involving tens of thousands of laborers, engineers, and artisans, all coordinated under a shared cosmological vision. A state religion, perhaps, but one built on observation and geometry, not blind faith. The Khmer architects weren't merely honoring the heavens, they were replicating them. And what better place to do it than Angkor, the city that is a heaven on earth? Even its elevation, its cardinal orientation, and its intricate bas-reliefs seem to echo astronomical phenomena: solar alignments at solstices, equinox reflections on sacred pools, and of course, the endless cyclical return of Venus. But here's the eerie part. Despite all this grandeur, despite its astronomical elegance, Angkor was eventually abandoned. Not razed, not conquered, abandoned. The The jungle crept back in, the stars no longer reflected in its pools. Venus still danced in the sky, but the people who had once tracked her were gone. Some blame climate change, shifting monsoons that collapsed the delicate water systems sustaining the region. Others blame political upheaval or religious transition. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a collapse. It was a completion. The machine had done its job. The cycle had been mapped, the dance recorded, and the silence was intentional. Like a clock tower chiming midnight, then resting. Today, tourists flood the site, snapping photos of the towers at sunrise. Most never notice the shadows cast by the equinox, the corridors aligned to solstice, or the stone metrics echoing the mathematics of an orbit traced in golden twilight. But for those who look deeper, Angkor Wat is not just a monument. It is a message that whispers, we saw the pattern, we honored it, and we became part of it. And in doing so, the ancient astronomers of Cambodia etched a cosmic poem across the jungle floor, one that still sings faintly every time Venus rises in the west and glances back at the temple built in her name. Long before telescopes, before satellites, before mathematics dared to challenge the heavens, our ancestors built with stone, but not just anywhere, and not just anyhow. From the sweltering sands of Karnak to the mist-veiled peaks of Machu Picchu, from the icy steppes of Anatolia to the ziggurats of Ur, sacred sites across the planet were constructed with eerie precision. Not to align with rivers, not with trade winds, but with stars. Why? What did they see that we no longer notice? Let's begin in Egypt. The Temple of Karnak, one of the oldest and largest religious complexes ever built, is oriented not toward the Nile or the cardinal directions, but toward the rising of the midwinter sun. On that one day each year, light travels down the axis of the temple and illuminates the inner sanctuary, a cosmic spotlight piercing the darkness. But it doesn't end there. The axis also aligns with the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. For the ancient Egyptians, Sirius wasn't just bright, it was prophetic. Its reappearance after a 70-day absence heralded the annual flooding of the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. This was not symbolic alignment, this was survival encoded in stone, temples as calendars, shrines as astronomical warnings. Across the ocean and into the Andes, another mystery waits. Machu Picchu. Tucked into the mountains like a secret whispered to the sky, this Incan citadel is more than a royal retreat. It's a solar observatory disguised as a city. Its structures frame key solar events: solstices, equinoxes, zenith crossings. The Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, was designed to track the movement of the sun with such accuracy that some believe it was part of a larger geodetic system spread across the empire. But the Incas didn't just track the sun, they watched the dark. The dark spaces between the stars, the celestial voids, were sacred. To them, the Milky Way wasn't a distant swirl of galaxies, but a river, the Mayu, mirroring the Urubamba River below. Llamas, foxes, serpents. They saw animals not in the stars, but in the absence of them. Temples were placed to honor these dark constellations, entities we still struggle to even see. Back to the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, the ziggurats, tiered towering monuments of mud brick, seem crude by modern standards. But their simplicity hides sophistication. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, built around 2100 BCE, may have been an observatory. Ancient Sumerian texts reference star gods descending to Earth. And more than that, they suggest the ziggurats were constructed as meeting places between heaven and earth. Was this metaphor or instruction? Ziggurats rise in levels, like steps, and the number of steps often matches known astronomical cycles. 7 terraces, 7 visible planets. Coincidence or a blueprint? These weren't isolated anomalies. In ancient Greece, the Parthenon aligns with the Hyades star cluster. In Ireland, the tomb of Newgrange lights up on the winter solstice, mirroring solar resurrection. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat traces Venus's orbit. In England, Stonehenge tracks both sun and moon. Different cultures, different myths, same stars. And yet, the alignments are rarely terrestrial. Few of these sites point to mountains, rivers, or food sources. They point to the sky. Why? One theory is that these cultures simply saw time differently. Linear chronology, the straight arrow of past, present, future, is a modern invention. The ancients lived in cycles, and stars were their metronomes. To build in harmony with the stars was to harmonize with time itself. Another theory is stranger, that some of these sites were waiting, not tracking celestial events, but signaling them. At Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple on Earth, massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures point to the rising of specific stars. Some believe it encodes the position of the sky around 10,000 BCE, including the constellation of Scorpius and the galactic center. But why fix the sky in stone? One possibility is memory, an attempt to immortalize a celestial pattern that would eventually drift due to precession, the Earth's slow axial wobble that shifts the stars' positions over millennia. To freeze time, to encode knowledge for future civilizations, or maybe it was a countdown, a way of marking an age, a celestial event to come. Some researchers suggest ancient temples weren't passive observatories but active participants in a cosmic ritual, a ritual that spanned continents, languages, and lifetimes. So when we walk through these temples, Karnak, Machu Picchu, we're not just moving through space, we're moving through time. Time measured in star cycles, time that forgets kings and empires but remembers solstices and equinoxes, and perhaps arrivals. Because there's one last theory, one whispered at the edge of mainstream archaeology, that these alignments were not made for humans, but for someone or something watching from above. When a temple points to Sirius or Vega or the Pleiades, who is it signaling? Is it admiration? Is it worship? Or is it a marker, a cosmic address, a landing beacon? We don't know, not yet, but we do know this. The ancients didn't build without purpose. They carved meaning into the earth itself, and their message is still glowing in the night sky, waiting for someone to listen. We tend to think of the stars as fixed, timeless markers etched into the heavens, but they're not. They move, they drift, they change. And not because the stars themselves are in motion, but because we are. The earth spins like a top, but it also wobbles like one. Slowly, relentlessly. A long, lazy tilt that takes nearly 26,000 years to complete a single cycle. This phenomenon is called axial precession. It's caused by the gravitational tug of the moon and sun on Earth's equatorial bulge. Over millennia, it alters the orientation of Earth's axis, the imaginary line it spins around. As a result, the celestial North Pole shifts, and the stars appear to gradually drift across the sky. And here's the kicker. Many ancient monuments are precisely aligned to stars, not where they are now, but where they were thousands of years ago. How? How could people with no telescopes, no satellites, and no written records know that the stars would change position slowly, subtly, over time? Let's rewind to the Great Pyramid of Giza, its so-called air shafts, narrow, mysterious tunnels angled out of the king's and queen's chambers, point not randomly but to specific stars, or rather, they did. Around 2500 BCE, these shafts aligned with Orion's belt and Thuban, the North Star at the time. But not today. Precession has shifted their targets. Modern astronomers realize that for these alignments to be so perfect, the builders must have calibrated the shafts using star positions that existed thousands of years earlier, or been aware that the stars move over time. The implications are staggering. Precession is not easily noticeable. It drifts at about 1 degree every 72 years, imperceptible in a single lifetime, even to the most dedicated skywatcher. To map this, you'd need records spanning centuries, passed down with incredible precision. Yet, similar precessional alignments show up in Angkor Wat, in the temples of Malta, in Stonehenge, in Tiwanaku. Which leads us to a troubling question. Did ancient civilizations know about precession? Or did they inherit this knowledge? The Greek astronomer Hipparchus is officially credited with discovering precession around 130 BCE. He compared Babylonian star catalogues to his own observations and noticed the stars had shifted. That's 2,000 years ago, but some monuments suggest awareness long before Hipparchus was even born. Take Göbekli Tepe, the 11,600-year-old megalithic complex in modern-day Turkey. Several of its carved pillars and orientations correspond with the positions of the constellation Scorpius and the galactic center, not as they appear now, but as they would have looked 12,000 years ago. Coincidence? Some researchers like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval argue it's too precise to dismiss. They suggest that ancient civilizations, or a lost progenitor culture, encoded precession into myth, hiding science in stories. And the myths are everywhere. In Hindu cosmology, a cycle called a Mahayuga lasts 4.32 million years, divided into smaller epochs. But if you zoom in, you'll find references to a 26,000-year cycle of rise and fall, eerily close to the precessional cycle. The ancient Greeks called it the Great Year, a cosmic cycle of ages governed by the slow drift of the heavens. The Mayans tracked long counts and calendar rounds lasting thousands of years. Their sacred site at Chichen Itza aligns not just with solar events but also, possibly, with long-term stellar shifts. Even the Egyptian zodiac of Dendera, carved on a temple ceiling, appears to track ages, symbolic eras associated with the precession of the equinoxes. Each age ruled by a different zodiac sign: Taurus, Aries, Pisces, and soon Aquarius. Which raises another unsettling thought. Are we living inside a cycle the ancients knew intimately, and we've only just begun to rediscover? And if so, what happens at the end of that cycle? In the precessional view, history is not linear. It moves in arcs. Civilizations rise and fall in rhythm with the cosmos, not at random, but in lockstep with the stars. Many ancient myths speak of a golden age, followed by a slow descent into darkness and eventually a renewal. These weren't poetic metaphors, they were chronologies, the celestial heartbeat of civilization. So maybe the monuments weren't warnings or calendars, maybe they were reminders, etched into the earth so that no matter how many empires fell, someone, somewhere, would remember to look up. But the memory faded. The math was lost. The language of stars was replaced with superstition, then religion, then industrial distraction. Precession became a footnote in astronomy textbooks, not a guiding force for humanity. Until now. Because now we've rediscovered it. Now we know the pole star changes. That in 12,000 years it will no longer be Polaris but Vega. That the constellations of the zodiac will continue to drift. That everything in the sky is in motion, even if it appears eternal. But the ancients? They knew. Not because they had telescopes, but because they had time. Because they watched. Because they remembered. And maybe, just maybe, because someone or something taught them. Deep in southeastern Turkey, beneath layers of earth and time, something extraordinary was buried. Not a village, not a tomb, but a megalithic temple, if temple is even the right word. Göbekli Tepe. It predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. It predates the pyramids by 7,000. It even predates the wheel. Dated to roughly 9,600 BCE, this site should not exist, not according to our current understanding of history. At that time, humans were supposed to be primitive hunter-gatherers, just beginning to settle into agriculture. Yet here, arranged in perfect circles and ovals, are massive T-shaped pillars carved with exquisite detail: lions, vultures, snakes, boars, all etched into limestone with the skill of practiced hands. The pillars weigh between 10 and 20 tons. Some are nearly 6 meters tall. There are no nearby quarries, no evidence of wheels, and no traces of metallurgy. So who built this, and why? The mainstream view says Göbekli Tepe was a ceremonial center, a place of gathering, ritual, and perhaps burial. But many alternative researchers, and increasingly even some Orthodox scholars, are beginning to suspect something deeper, that this site was not just sacred. It was scientific, a map, a message, a record of the sky itself. Let's start with Pillar 43, also known as the Vulture Stone. It's one of the most studied carvings at the site. On its surface are animals arranged in a peculiar sequence: a scorpion, a bird, a headless human, a lion. Strange to us, but to some researchers this is more than myth or art, it's astronomy. In 2017, researchers Martin Sweatman and Dimitrios Tsikritsis published a controversial paper suggesting that the Vulture Stone is a date stamp, one that records a comet strike around 10,950 BCE, and not just any comet, a global cataclysm. They connect it to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, the idea that a fragmented comet struck Earth at the end of the last ice age, causing mass extinctions, abrupt cooling, and the destruction of an advanced pre-ice age culture. In this view, Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple, it's a memorial, a warning, a cosmic black box carved in stone. And what better way to encode the date of a disaster than with the stars? Using the precession of the equinoxes, Sweatman and his team mapped the constellations represented by the animals. They found that the arrangement on Pillar 43 matches the sky as it appeared on or around 10,950 BCE, the very date proposed for the comet impact. That's not all.
Other pillars at Göbekli Tepe may align with the summer and winter solstices. Some seem to track Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, as it would have first appeared on the horizon after the Ice Age, an event the ancient Egyptians also revered thousands of years later.
But here's the mind-bending part. This kind of knowledge, of solstices, of precession, of stellar risings, requires long-term observation, generations of careful sky-watching, note-taking, and transmission. Are we to believe this came from illiterate nomadic foragers, or are we looking at the fingerprints of a lost civilization, a culture with science, structure, and memory, one that collapsed and whose survivors passed on fragments of knowledge to later peoples? Göbekli Tepe wasn't just old, it was deliberately buried. Sometime around 8000 BCE, after standing for over 1,000 years, the entire site was entombed under hundreds of tons of soil and rubble, an act so thorough, so intentional, that it preserved the site almost perfectly. Why? To protect it from invaders, from environmental catastrophe, from forgetting. Some even speculate the builders knew their civilization was doomed and buried Göbekli Tepe as a kind of time capsule, a cosmic message to the future, carved not in parchment or pixels, but in stone. So it would endure, so we would find it, so we would remember. And the iconography doesn't end with Pillar 43. Scattered across the site are symbols that repeat, bags, often held by humanoid figures. You'll find the same motif thousands of miles away, in Sumer, in Olmec art, even among the gods of Mesopotamia. What do these bags hold? Grain, water, knowledge? Some say they symbolize the stars themselves, that the bags are stylized constellations carried by sky beings, deities, or watchers. That the builders of Göbekli Tepe didn't just look up, they may have worshipped upward, or perhaps they remembered something that came from the sky, something or someone. To mainstream science, these connections are speculative at best. There is no proof of a comet strike, no definitive decoding of the carvings, no consensus on the astronomical theory. But still, the evidence lingers, too much for coincidence, too structured for chaos. we are left with a paradox. If Göbekli Tepe is as old as it appears, and if its carvings encode precessional astronomy, and if it aligns with solstices and stellar risings, then someone, 12,000 years ago, understood the heavens better than most modern humans do today. So what was Göbekli Tepe? A temple, a clock, a star map,
or a warning left behind by those who watched the sky catch fire?
We don't yet know, but as we peel back the layers of soil, we're not just unearthing a ruin, we're unearthing a reality, one that threatens to rewrite everything we thought we knew about who we are and where we come from. Zoom out. Zoom far out. From Göbekli Tepe's carved vultures and scorpions to the whispered fables of distant tribes, we find ourselves adrift in a strange current, a current of myths. Floods, fire from the sky, cosmic battles, sky gods with thunder in their hands. We've been told these are allegories, metaphors, human attempts to explain a chaotic world, stories spun by the firelight to tame the dark. But what if there's something else entirely? What if myth is not merely imagination, but information, encoded, preserved, passed down, not in stone tablets but in stories, carried through memory when there was no other option? Because long before writing, before papyrus and parchment, humanity faced an urgent problem. How do you store knowledge across generations? How do you pass on warnings, calendars, the behavior of stars, the return of seasons, the rhythms of Earth? The answer, some now believe, was myth, not just for entertainment, but for survival. Let's take a journey across continents. Start with the Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime. Their oral traditions stretch back tens of thousands of years, and within their stories are references to sea levels, landforms, and starscapes that match modern geological data from the Ice Age. One tribe, the Gunditj Mara, speak of a great creator who shaped the landscape. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered a 6,600-year-old eel farming system, one of the oldest aquaculture sites on Earth. The stories were not metaphor. They were history. Travel now to India. The Rig Veda, one of the world's oldest texts, sings of the seven sages, the Sapta Rishi, who dwell in the sky. They correspond directly to the stars of the Big Dipper. In Greece, the myth of Phaethon, who loses control of the sun chariot and scorches the earth, has eerie similarities to impact stories, describing fire in the sky, floods, and global disruption. In Mesoamerica, the Maya told of cyclical ages, each one ending in catastrophe. Their long-count calendar tracks celestial cycles with astonishing accuracy, predicting eclipses and solstices centuries in advance. And in nearly every culture on Earth, you find flood myths. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah, from Deucalion in Greek lore to Manu in Hindu tradition, the same theme emerges: a great flood, a chosen survivor, a rebirth of civilization. Coincidence, or a collective memory of a real cataclysm, perhaps at the end of the Ice Age, encoded into story and sung across generations? Now imagine you're living in a world with no books, no maps, no telescopes, no hard drives, but you want to preserve the date of a comet strike, or track the return of a specific star every 72 years, or predict when the monsoon will arrive. How do you do it? You embed the math in mythology, give numbers personalities, turn constellations into characters, make the sky a stage and let the cosmos perform. This idea that myths are mnemonic systems is gaining traction, because as we decode ancient stories, we're beginning to see patterns, structures, mathematics. Let's take the precession of the equinoxes, a slow 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis that changes which stars rise at dawn during the spring equinox. To track this cycle, you need hundreds, if not thousands, of years of observations. And yet in ancient Egypt, the bull, Taurus, the ram, Aries, and the fish, Pisces, all appear prominently in art, each corresponding to different ages defined by precession. Coincidence? Or were these symbols time markers encoded into religion, myth, and ritual? In India, the Mahabharata references celestial events that align with specific sky positions from thousands of years ago. The zodiac itself, 12 signs corresponding to star clusters, may have originally been a timekeeping tool, not a fortune-telling gimmick. The animal figures carved at Göbekli Tepe may represent constellations, tracking astronomical events far older than recorded history. And the gods who came from the sky, who taught agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. Perhaps they were not gods. Perhaps they were memories of ancestors, or even survivors of a lost scientific class, mythologized through the fog of time. The mythic becomes the mnemonic. The fantastic becomes functional. Think of it this way: what if the story of Orion the Hunter is not just a poetic tale, but a celestial map for navigation? What if the tale of the Pleiades, the seven sisters pursued by a hunter, is not only myth, but a story explaining the heliacal rising of that star cluster? The Greeks knew the Pleiades disappeared from the sky for 40 nights, a fact they embedded into poetry. But similar myths appear in Japan, in Native American lore, even in sub-Saharan Africa. The same story, the same stars at different continents. No contact, only sky, only memory, only myth. In this light, stories become hard drives, gods become algorithms, myths become data compression, a way to encode vast information in a format that resists time. Because the most dangerous thing a civilization can do is forget. And that brings us back to the most haunting question of all. What have we forgotten? What warnings lie encoded in the myths we dismiss as fantasy? What truths are hidden behind dragons and gods and heroes? Perhaps the ancient world wasn't primitive. Perhaps it was brilliant.
And perhaps we're just beginning to remember what we already knew.
Because if the stars were stories, it wasn't for art, it was for survival. December 21st, 2012. The date passed with barely a tremor. No apocalypse, no cosmic event, just a flurry of memes, Hollywood blockbusters, and sighs of relief. But behind the headlines and hysteria was something real, something ancient, something astronomically rare. It wasn't about the end of the world, it was about alignment. Because on that date, give or take a few years astronomically speaking, our sun appeared to align with the dark rift of the Milky Way. A shadowy seam in our galactic plane, a rift shrouded in dust, mystery, and myth. And the ones who tracked this alignment? The ancient Maya, centuries before telescopes, before Newton, before Copernicus. The Maya had already built a calendar that pinpointed this moment, thousands of years in advance. Why? Why did this galactic alignment matter so much? And what did they think it meant? Let's go deeper. First, what is the dark rift?
If you look up at the Milky Way on a clear night, especially from the equator, you'll notice a band of light stretching across the sky. That's the plane of our galaxy, as seen from within.
But running through the center of that glowing river is a dark lane, a massive, light-blocking cloud of interstellar dust. It hides the galactic core from our naked eyes. The Maya called this region the Xibalba Bay, the Black Road. To them it was no ordinary shadow. It was the entrance to the underworld, a place of death and rebirth. Now add the sun. Because due to the 26,000-year cycle of axial precession, the position of the sunrise on the winter solstice slowly drifts across the stars. And around 2012 it reached the point where, from Earth's view, it rose in alignment with the dark rift of the Milky Way. A once every 13,000-year event. In fact, the entire long count calendar, a 5,126-year cycle, was built to end and reset precisely at this moment. So again, we must ask, why? Why did a civilization in Mesoamerica obsessed with cycles build such a precise cosmic clock? And why set its reset point to this galactic convergence? Some researchers believe it was symbolic, a spiritual rebirth, a cosmic reset button. But others suspect something more literal, that the Maya weren't just mythmakers. They were sky watchers, mathematicians, and possibly messengers from what or whom is still a mystery. But their knowledge of astronomy was unparalleled for their time. They could predict eclipses, Venus transits, and solstices with uncanny precision. They mapped the heavens not just for agriculture, but for philosophy, and perhaps even warnings. Because to the Maya, time wasn't linear. It was cyclical. Events echoed. Ages turned like gears. Each era ended with chaos and was reborn in fire, flood, or famine. The long count wasn't predicting a single doomsday. It was forecasting a turning point, a shift, a liminal moment between cycles where old systems crumble and new realities take form. And if we zoom out to a galactic scale, that's not so far-fetched, because as Earth orbits the Sun, and the Sun orbits the center of the galaxy, it bobs gently above and below the galactic plane, like a needle weaving through fabric. Some theorists argue that these moments of alignment, where Earth, Sun, and galactic core converge, could expose our planet to cosmic energies, increased gravitational forces, intense cosmic rays, or disruptions in the heliosphere, the magnetic bubble that shields us from interstellar radiation. Too fringe, perhaps, but we know that galactic cosmic rays rise and fall in long cycles. We know that solar activity impacts our climate, technology, and biology, and we know that ancient peoples, without our distractions, watched the sky like their lives depended on it. Because often, they did. The Maya weren't alone. In ancient Egypt, the Dendera zodiac marks cosmic cycles with galactic reference points. In Vedic India, Yuga cycles echo the idea of long cosmic ages, punctuated by collapse. In Andean tradition, the Pachacuti foretells great upheavals and reordering of the world. Across continents and cultures, the idea of cyclical destruction and renewal tied to celestial alignments repeats again and again. Are these just coincidences? Or are we looking at a global memory of something real? Something observed? Something survived? Let's not forget, the last time Earth was aligned with the galactic center during a solstice was over 13,000 years ago. What happened then? The end of the Ice Age. Sudden sea level rise. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests a cosmic event, possibly a comet or fragments, triggered massive climate shifts and extinctions. Is it possible the ancients encoded this memory, created calendars not to count days, but to track cycles of catastrophe, to know when the next black road would appear, when the sun would return to the gate of the underworld? To be clear, the 2012 alignment didn't mark a moment of destruction, but a threshold, a potential inflection point, a signal that a long cycle had ended and a new one had begun. We didn't burn, but maybe, just maybe, we began to shift. Technologically, spiritually, ecologically. We now live in a world where old systems are cracking, where truth, trust, and time feel unstable, where climate shifts, power shifts, consciousness shifts. And maybe, just maybe, the Maya would nod at this, not in fear, but in knowing, because to them, the galactic alignment wasn't the end. It was a return, a recalibration, a chance to choose. And maybe the question isn't what the Maya predicted would happen to us, but what they wanted us to do when it did. To pay attention, to remember, to look up, and to realize that the cosmos doesn't just mark time, it shapes it. They charted the heavens with obsessive precision. They aligned temples to solstices, built pyramids that mirrored star patterns, and tracked lunar eclipses centuries before telescopes existed. But then, they disappeared. Not just one civilization, not just one continent, many. From the Maya in Mesoamerica, to the ancestral Puebloans of Chaco Canyon, to the mysterious builders of Göbekli Tepe. They rose with brilliant insight, then collapsed into silence. Why?
How could civilizations with such astronomical mastery fail to see their own downfall coming?
Or did they? What if the very skies they worshipped were trying to warn them? Let's rewind. The Maya didn't vanish overnight, but between 800 and 1000 CE, many of their great cities, Tikal, Copan, Palenque, were suddenly abandoned. Their once bustling plazas became overgrown with jungle. Their sacred observatories fell into ruin. For decades, scholars blamed war, rebellion, or overpopulation, but more recent evidence suggests a devastating drought, one so long and brutal that it may have broken the very backbone of Maya society. Tree ring data, lake sediment, stalagmites, they all tell the same story: a multi-decade collapse in rainfall, precisely when the cities began to fall. And yet, the Maya were master sky watchers. They tracked Venus, eclipses, and seasonal rains with awe-inspiring accuracy, so why couldn't they prepare? Maybe they did. Inscriptions hint that ritual offerings increased. Temples were expanded, ceremonies intensified. Perhaps they knew something was coming, but they were watching the wrong signals, or worse, they were watching and powerless to stop it. It's a pattern we see elsewhere. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Anasazi, built a civilization of cliff dwellings and vast road networks, with buildings aligned to solstices and equinoxes. But by the late 1200s, they too abandoned their cities. Here again, the evidence points to drought, and perhaps something deeper. Signs of conflict, cannibalism, spiritual upheaval. It wasn't just environmental, it was existential. The collapse came not just from the sky, but from the earth beneath them and the societies around them. And then there's Göbekli Tepe, built over 11,000 years ago, before agriculture, before cities. A site with massive T-shaped pillars, carved animals, and astronomical alignments, and then buried on purpose by its own builders. Why would anyone hide such a marvel? Some believe it was ritualistic, others think it was survival. A desperate attempt to preserve knowledge before catastrophe struck again. Because something did strike. Roughly 12,800 years ago, at the dawn of this megalithic site, the Earth entered a mysterious cold period known as the Younger Dryas. It coincides with sudden global climate shifts, mass extinctions, and perhaps a cosmic impact. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests that fragments of a disintegrating comet bombarded the northern hemisphere, setting off massive fires, atmospheric disturbances, and a millennium-long return to Ice Age conditions. Could the builders of Göbekli Tepe have witnessed that, survived it, and built their temple as both tribute and warning? If so, then maybe they, like the Maya and others, weren't building for survival. They were building for memory, to encode the sky, to leave messages for the future. But there's a chilling twist. What if these collapses weren't just about droughts or wars? What if these were patterns? Cycles of destruction, written not just in myth but in stone. Let's look at the sun. Modern science tells us it's not always calm. Every 11 years it goes through solar cycles, peaks of activity with sunspots, flares, and ejections. But sometimes it goes wild. The Carrington event of 1859 was a solar superstorm, so powerful it fried telegraph lines, caused fires, and lit up the skies with auroras seen near the equator. If that happened today, it would destroy satellites, power grids, and communications globally. But that's just one flare. What if every few thousand years something much larger happens? What if cosmic cycles of radiation, solar output, gravitational waves, or galactic alignment periodically destabilize our world? Not with instant doom, but with slow planetary pressure. Drying rains, shifting poles, mass migrations, civil unrest. And what if the ancients knew? What if their greatest monuments weren't just tombs or temples, but time capsules, sky-coded warnings built in stone? telling us through alignments and myths that this has all happened before and may happen again. Here's the pattern. 1. A civilization emerges. 2. It watches the sky. 3. It reaches a moment of spiritual and astronomical peak. 4. Then the earth shifts. Drought, quake, eruption, or climate turn. 5. The society collapses. 6th. And what remains? Stone, stars, silence. Why do they all vanish? Because maybe they were building upward while danger crept beneath. They read the heavens, but couldn't stop tectonic drift or volcanic ash, or the slow ticking of climate collapse. They honored the stars, but couldn't hold back hungry neighbors or failing crops. They built for eternity and vanished in decades. The sky did not save them. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe they weren't building to survive. Maybe they were building so we would remember, so we wouldn't make the same mistakes. But here we are, watching the skies, measuring carbon, living in cities built on fault lines, dependent on fragile grids, global trade, and delusions of permanence. What if the next collapse isn't centuries away? What if it's already begun? The ancients didn't fall from ignorance, they fell from insight. The kind that sees catastrophe coming but can't prevent it. And maybe, just maybe, they left us their last gift. A whisper through stone, a plea through myth. Look up. And remember, we built for you. Don't vanish like us. Why do we look up? Why, from ancient shepherds to modern physicists, are we drawn to the night sky as if something hidden there has been calling us all along? The answer may begin not in the stars but in the brain, because long before telescopes and calendars, we had something far older: pattern recognition. Our ancestors weren't just surviving predators or gathering fruit, they were mapping the world. A rustle in the grass could mean danger. A shift in cloud shape might signal rain. A sliver of moonlight could mark the start of a season. The human brain evolved to see order in chaos, even if sometimes that order wasn't really there. This tendency has a name: apophenia, the mind's drive to see patterns in randomness. It's why we see faces in clouds, animals in constellations, and symbols in the stars. But here's the twist. Sometimes those patterns are real, and sometimes they're a code, not artificial, not man-made, but woven into the very fabric of nature, waiting for a brain evolved to see it. Let's rewind. Picture early humans on a dark plain thousands of years ago. No phones, no lights, just a sky full of stars. They notice something. The same stars rise at the same place in the sky each year. A bright one, Venus, follows a strange cycle, disappearing and reappearing. The moon waxes and wanes. Eclipses come seemingly random, but not quite. Over generations, they connect the dots. They learn to predict. And when prediction enters the picture, so does power. Those who can read the stars can say when to plant, when to hunt, when to build. Suddenly, astronomy becomes civilization. But something deeper is happening. These sky watchers aren't just learning nature, they're discovering the roots of logic. Think about it. If A, the star, rises here, and B, the rain comes after, then next year, A should still mean B. This is basic causality, the foundation of science and myth. Because at the same time sky law was forming, so was language. Language is also about pattern, symbols arranged to produce meaning, and just like star patterns, it takes time and memory to form. The stars didn't just help us mark time, and they may have helped us invent it. Here's how. Without a clock or calendar, how do you know how long something takes? You need a reference. The moon phase, the position of a constellation, the length of a shadow. The sky becomes the first clock. Not by seconds or minutes, but by patterns in the heavens that repeat with enough precision to become reliable. In other words, the sky gave humans a framework for time. This rewired our brains.
It allowed us to think not just in now, but in before and after, and what might come next.
We started seeing life as a sequence, and with sequence comes story. The heavens told stories of hunters, scorpions, twins, lions. But beneath the myths was something more powerful, an instinctual code of understanding, a way for generations to pass down warnings, wisdom, and wonder, using the only screen they had, the night sky.
Here's the part most people miss.
Our brains didn't just evolve to read the sky. The sky may have shaped our brains. Recent studies in neuroscience suggest that watching the stars, literally looking up at a dark sky and tracking changes over time, activates regions of the brain tied to long-term memory, spatial reasoning, and symbolic thinking. In other words, stargazing wasn't just spiritual, it was cognitive training. Think of ancient sky watchers as early scientists and early coders. They were encoding events like floods, seasons, eclipses into sky maps, then passing those maps forward as stories, myths, and monuments. This leads to a haunting question. Could the myths themselves be codes? Take the story of Orion chasing the Pleiades. Orion, a hunter, follows the sisters across the sky, but astronomers have noticed the rising of Orion in the night sky precedes the visibility of the Pleiades. Is this story really about a chase? Or is it a mnemonic, a memory aid to track sky patterns and seasons? Now multiply that across every civilization, from the Aboriginal songlines of Australia to the Norse sagas of Ragnarok, to the Egyptian tale of Osiris and the rebirth of the Nile. Patterns, stories, encoded time, encoded knowledge. Here's a mind-bending possibility. Maybe our instinct to mythologize the stars isn't a bug in the system, it's the system. An evolutionary adaptation that helped early humans survive by wrapping hard knowledge in emotionally sticky stories. And maybe, just maybe, those stories still carry echoes of truths we've forgotten. Now, fast forward. Today we talk of machine code, programming languages, AI. But long before that, our first programming language was symbolic sky law. Not ones and zeros, but cycles and stories. Not computers, but consciousness. Could ancient civilizations have intentionally encoded these lessons, not just in stories, but in stone? Consider the 25,920-year cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. This astronomical wobble of Earth's axis was known, encoded, or hinted at in Hindu yugas, Mayan long counts, and the Great Year of the Greeks. It's not visible over a lifetime. It's a cycle of civilizations, a code you can only detect if you watch the sky across millennia. And yet, somehow ancient peoples may have known it. Why?
Because their brains were wired for pattern.
Their memories were stored in myths. And their myths? They were data compression, huge truths shrunk into symbolic stories, passed on through ritual repetition and reverence. And maybe we've stopped listening. We've drowned the stars with city lights. We've replaced stories with signals. But our brains, they still crave the pattern, still ache for the code, still respond to the primal awe of looking up and feeling, even if we don't know why, that something matters, that this matters, and that, just maybe, the sky has one more message for us, not just in the constellations we name, but in the instinct to name them at all, a whisper across time. You are the code. You are the pattern. You are the story still being written. Imagine this. The Earth is quiet. Our cities, gone. Satellites, dead. Not a whisper from humanity remains. Except for one thing. A map, etched in stone, or encoded in orbits, or burned into metal, drifting through the void. A star map. A message not of who we were, but of what we understood. Because long after our monuments crumble, the stars remain. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. The ancients seem to understand this intuitively. Why else carve sky maps into megaliths? Why else align temples with solstices, track eclipses in gears, or build pyramids that echo constellations? They weren't just watching the heavens, they were speaking through them, They were encoding messages in the most durable medium available, the sky itself. Now, thousands of years later, we face the same question: how do you speak to the future? Not the near future, not next year or next century, but the kind of future where languages are extinct, continents have shifted, and even memory itself has died. Let's get practical. Say we want to leave a message, not just to humans, but to any intelligence that might arise long after us. What would we write and how? The first thing we learn from ancient star maps is this: simplicity survives. The more abstract the idea, the harder it is to preserve, but cycles, positions, geometry, those can endure. Consider the Pioneer plaques and the Voyager golden records. They used universal constants, like hydrogen spin states and pulsar timings, to create a kind of cosmic Rosetta Stone. They assumed whoever finds them would understand physics, even if they understood nothing else. Clever, yes, but deeply optimistic. Because physics isn't always intuitive, especially across species, so what else might work? We go back to what the ancients used: the sky. A sky map has a strange property. If you carve a picture of the sky as seen from Earth, accurate to a specific time, you are, in effect, encoding a timestamp. Because stars move. Very slowly, yes, but measurably. Due to proper motion, precession, and even galactic drift, constellations change shape over tens of thousands of years. So if someone finds a sky map and can match it to the configuration of stars, they can figure out when it was made. That's stunning, but it gets better. If the map also includes Earth's position relative to stars, or even the location of the moon and planets, it can pinpoint a date, a place, and even the observer's vantage point in the galaxy. In other words, it's cosmic metadata, time-stamped, geotagged, no language required, just math. But here's the philosophical curveball. Why would we want to send this? What do we hope they understand? That we knew the stars, that we tried to reach, that we existed at all. There's something deeply human, maybe even universal, about this instinct to leave a mark, a fingerprint on time. And the most lasting mark we can make might be a map of what the sky looked like to us, because it tells not just where we were, but what we valued. Here's the eerie part. The ancients may have done this already, and we just haven't recognized it. We often look at ancient structures and see temples, tombs, or tools. But what if some were just messages, not for us, but for the next world? Consider Göbekli Tepe, built over 11,000 years ago, before writing, before the wheel, and yet aligned with celestial bodies. Or Chaco Canyon, where light snakes across carved spirals on the solstice. Or the Nazca lines, giant geoglyphs that only make sense from the sky. These may not be messages to gods, they may be postcards to the stars, saying, "We were here, we saw this, this mattered, and maybe we should do the same." Imagine a modern-day star map etched into bedrock beneath layers of shielding, or carved into the moon's crust, or placed on an asteroid in stable orbit, impervious to erosion, flood, or war. The map could include the exact sky from Earth on a known date, the relative positions of nearby stars and pulsars, a simple model of our solar system, diagrams showing light wavelengths and basic particle interactions, and most importantly, a human silhouette reaching upward, because it's not just about facts, it's about intent. We want whoever finds it, be it alien or post-human, to know we looked up, we asked questions, we tried to understand, and that even in our fallibility, even in our eventual disappearance, we reached for something greater than ourselves. There's a poetic symmetry here. The stars are the oldest things we know. Some are billions of years old. And when we look at them, we're seeing the past. Literally. The light reaching our eyes may have left those stars before Earth even formed. So maybe it's only fitting that the stars be our messengers forward. A bridge across time, from one ancient being to another. But here's the haunting truth. Maybe we're not the message's sender. Maybe we're the receiver. Maybe the myths, alignments, and maps left by the ancients aren't just observations, but communications, encoded in the only language both sides could understand, the sky. Maybe someone already figured it out, and maybe we've missed it, not because we're blind, but because we forgot to look up with purpose. Let's not make that mistake again. So if the Earth must go silent, if our towers fall and our data dies, let there be one final signal. A map, a code, a story, told not in words, but in the universal syntax of starlight and motion. And maybe, just maybe, when the next curious mind looks up and wonders if anyone was ever here, they'll find it, and they'll know we were. And we left the stars not just to light our night, but to carry our name forever. Night falls, but not the kind we know. No cities, no glow, just stars, raw and unfiltered, above a sleeping Earth. In that silence, the sky wasn't just beautiful, it was useful. It was a map. Not a metaphor, a literal working navigation system, guiding migration, planting, fishing, ceremony. Before we carved paths into dirt or lines onto paper, we mapped our world by what moved above it. And for tens of thousands of years, that was enough. You could cross oceans by stars alone. You could predict the rains by watching Orion's rise. You could trace time not with clocks, but with constellations. The sky was compass, calendar, and canvas, and we, tiny and fragile, moved to its rhythm. But then, something changed. We built higher, brighter, louder. And slowly the stars began to vanish, not from the sky, but from our memory. We forgot how to read them. We forgot what they meant. And now, standing beneath that same sky, bleached and broken by light and noise, we ask, did they build for us? Did those who carved spirals into stone or aligned temples to the solstice do it so that we might remember? Because when you really look, when you step into the ruins, when you sit still beneath an ancient archway and let the sky return, you start to wonder, were these not monuments but messages, not to gods, but to the future, to us? And if that's true, did we miss the message? Think about this. Why did so many ancient cultures, isolated by oceans and millennia, build with the sky in mind? Why did the Dogon tribe know of invisible stars? Why does Angkor Wat mirror Draco? Why are the pyramids of Giza not just perfectly aligned, but mathematically encoded with the speed of light? Coincidence, perhaps, or maybe convergence. A deep, shared intuition that the sky meant more. That it wasn't just decoration, it was instruction. Maybe the ancients didn't just observe the stars. Maybe they were taught by them. We don't mean aliens, not necessarily, but something even stranger. Memory embedded in sky. Patterns passed not by language or stone, but by story, by rhythm, by repetition, and when enough people looked up, with awe, with hunger, with discipline, they began to see things. Not just stars, but structures, lattices of meaning, maps, yes, but also warnings, cycles, reminders, lessons written in light. But to see it, you had to keep watching, night after night, generation after generation. The sky was a book, but only readable if you never stopped turning its pages. And maybe we did stop. Maybe in our rush to decode atoms and galaxies, we lost the simpler truths above. We digitized the heavens and pixelated the sacred, and now the map is still there, glowing patiently, but we no longer know how to read it. What if the stars weren't just used to navigate Earth, but to navigate ourselves, our seasons, our souls, our stories? We've inherited myths, Orion the hunter, Cassiopeia the queen, but we treat them like bedtime tales. What if they were tools? What if every ancient myth was a mnemonic device? A key to remembering cycles of time, solar flares, comet returns, the rise and fall of empires. What if gods
were just coded reminders of natural forces we once knew intimately.
For instance, the Maya tracked Venus with staggering accuracy. They knew its cycles, its risings, its disappearances, and they believed it governed human affairs. To us, that sounds superstitious. To them, it was pattern recognition, because when you live in harmony with the sky, you notice correlations. Not because the stars cause events, but because everything is connected by rhythm. And if you map the rhythm, you can anticipate the beat. That's what a sky map was. Not a star chart, but a clockwork of meaning. A way of keeping time, yes, but also of keeping truth. And maybe the greatest truth is this: we are temporary.
The stars are not.
So if you want your message to survive, you write it in the stars. You mirror the sky in stone, you tell your stories in alignments, you carve your questions into megaliths, not because they will answer back, but because the act itself is sacred. A kind of faith, a declaration that we were here and we saw.
But here's where it gets unsettling.
What if some of those ancient sky maps didn't point outward, but inward? What if the map wasn't for travel, but for transformation? A guide not to new lands, but to new minds. Maybe the sky wasn't just a canvas, maybe it was a mirror. And when they looked up, they weren't seeking direction, they were seeking themselves. So let's return to the question, did they build for us? Maybe, but maybe they built for themselves. To remember what mattered, to place a marker in the infinite, to whisper across time, we were aligned, we saw order, we felt wonder, and in doing so they left behind a choice. We can ignore the sky, or we can remember what it meant. Because even now, even through the haze and the wires and the noise, the stars are still there, waiting, marking time and carrying secrets, still a map, if we dare to look. And so we return, not to where we began, but to what we became. From the first fire-lit carvings to the stars etched in digital code, we have always reached outward, upward, inward. Across 16 fragments of memory, wonder, and speculation, we have walked with forgotten builders, mapped invisible forces, and questioned the very nature of what it means to know. Not just to know facts, but to feel that ancient gravity of mystery. That human pull to make meaning where none is guaranteed. Because maybe, just maybe, the greatest legacy we leave behind isn't what we build, it's what we notice. The way a stone aligns with a shadow, the way a star returns after 26,000 years, the way a question, whispered in the dark, can outlive a civilization. This was never a story about ruins. It was a story about reminders. That intelligence is not just calculation. That truth is not just measurement. That wonder may be the oldest form of knowledge we have. So what do we do now? We look again. At the sky, at the stones, at the questions, and we remember that even if we've forgotten the language, the map is still there, waiting not to lead us somewhere, but to lead us back to ourselves. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey through the universe here on Frontiers of Infinity. If this glimpse into the unknown has sparked your curiosity, be sure to subscribe and join us, where we unravel the darkest mysteries of space.